Hey everybody, thanks for being here. Thanks for wanting to know more about mobile home parks. Thanks so much. So my goal for the time together, we've got 15 minutes to cover a lot of information. So my name's Ryan Smith. I'm in the mobile home park business. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me after. But for the rest of the time, if it's okay with you, let's just go through some stuff that might be helpful. So with that in mind, let's see here if it's coming up there. Okay, so in our time, I thought it'd be helpful if we kind of talk about a base thesis for why mobile home parks. And let me ask you this. How many of you, anybody currently own mobile home parks in the room? Okay, a couple hands. You realize 10 years ago you never would have raised your hand? You're like, not me. And how many of you are interested? Obviously, by virtue of your attendance, you might be interested, but how many of you are seriously considering investing? Okay, cool. So in our time, I'm hopefully going to equip you with some information that's helpful, encouraging, put some wind at your back, so to speak. So talk about a base thesis, go through some industry statistics that I find compelling, you might as well. Go through the current environment, what's it like out there, what are we seeing, what are we engaging with, how are we dealing with those things, and then go through some considerations. And my goal with that is to give you some pointers that you might consider as you go out and try to implement a business within this asset class. So things that might be helpful to consider. So we're going to just kind of go through it. So base thesis, let's see here. So supply demand. So I said it earlier kind of in my bio. When I started buying mobile home parks, one of the things that I liked most about the asset class that kind of jumped out was the fact that, simply put, they're needed everywhere, not allowed anywhere, because as you know, they're hated everywhere. In fact, I think in this room, I think everybody probably shares this view that mobile home parks, it's a good business, it's a noble endeavor in that we're providing quality housing for an affordable rate, and I think that's a noble pursuit, at least by the way I view things. However, while it's a good thing to pursue, it's a good business, a noble cause, nobody wants it near them, right? In fact, if I were to say, hey, let's build a mobile home park across from your home, your community where you live, there would be an uproar. So there's really two things. On supply, based on information that we have and have considered, we found that in general, on average, and I'll start with this, there are about 55,000 mobile home parks in the United States. Okay? On average, in any given year, there's roughly 10 to 20 that are built or developed out of the ground, and there's about 150 communities that are torn down for highest and best use. You know, there's a mobile home park, now there's a Walgreens or a Walmart, or within a mile of my home in Orlando, Florida, there's now a place called Lucky's Market, which is from Colorado here. A year ago, there was a mobile home park, now there's a Lucky's Market. So in short, there's a rising demand for the product, and supply is declining, which I think is a pretty good economic characteristic of the asset class. So we like that. And I'll also say one of the compelling features of the space when I first decided to get into it is not only did I think there was a moat, this barrier to entry and the stigma, I viewed the stigma as a protective layer to my capital. And in fact, I'll even go as far as say this. If at the end of this discussion, if you say this is the worst thing I ever heard, this is the worst concept, I hated everything about it, all I would ask you to do is to go tell everybody as loud as you can, okay? Because you're doing what? You're perpetuating the stigma which protects our capital. So not only do I think there's a protective barrier, I think it's durable. I think it's a durable moat. I think it'll persist. So supply is constrained. It has been, it is. We think it'll continue. And demand, I don't need to go much into this, but when I got into the space and started considering it, well more than 10 years ago, my view was that demand for the product would decline, would grow. Supply would continue to decline, demand would grow. And it has done just that. So just a couple pieces of information. So number one, as of the last census, roughly 52% of Americans make roughly $30,000 a year or less. Okay, so standard budget is what for housing? So when you take somebody's income, what percentage do you apply to that income to around what? 30%, yeah. So 30% of 30,000 is what? About 9,000? So divide that by 12. You have roughly 200 million Americans that need a housing solution at roughly $750 a month, all in. Okay, there's not many product types that actually do that well. Mobile home parks do, which we'll get to in a little bit.